projects, as many of you know, tend to get pushed aside. This is no exception. This is something that we have been working on for a long time, and a lot of people keep asking, oh, are you guys done with that yet? Are you done with that yet? Oh, you got to be getting close to that. No, we're not. We actually are now, but we were not for a long time. This is a Case 1175. It has a 1070 block in it, but it's the same block. It just has a different tag on it. This belonged to a racetrack. This was their like rolling, ripping, abuse it tractor. Grandpa picked it up saying, oh, there's nothing really wrong with it. It's a good deal. Well, as we tore into it, it wasn't such a good deal necessarily. It had a crankcase full of water and was running on 5 cylinders. The transmission also had water in it, as best I can remember, but that was like 4 or 5 years ago. Tractor sat for a year because we didn't have anywhere to put it to work on it. Acquired a few bees nests in the meantime, and then we tried to pull start it, and it wouldn't start. It would just smoke white. And then we pulled the drain plug on the oil pan, and 7 gallons of water ran out after we had already drained it once, and it had the exhaust covered by a rain cap anyway. So it rolled in here, it got the motor gone through, rebuilt. We just never quite got around to putting the finishing touches on it. We needed air cleaner parts. We needed some oil lines for the turbo because, as I'll picture here, there were some gooberizations and more redneck engineering than I've ever seen in one project, at least on something this new. And so we needed some lines for various things, air cleaner lines and oil lines for the turbo and all that. In the meantime, our 1370 blew up, grenaded a rod bearing, we're pretty sure. Check that video out of mine. The 1370 Knocking on Heaven's Door tractor is supplying us air cleaner parts, muffler. There's an exhaust manifold and turbo, which I think are still in the garage, because instead of turning the center point on this turbo, we're just going to throw the other turbo on it. At least I covered it up with a tarp before last harvest season. Brand new turbo, but the center section has to get turned, and we didn't have our oil line from there, the drain back line, so that manifold and deal has that. So we're going to put that on today. There's a lot of cleaning up we got to do first. And we're going to try to get it out of here before we got to run the grain dryer for corn, which is, I don't know, it's September 13th, 14th today. And corn's going to be coming in the next month or a little more. So we're going to try to get this thing done, running and driving at least, so we can pull the monster in. It's chilling back there. Take a look inside the oil pan, see what made those giant dents, and see about some rod bearings for the old girl maybe. But stay tuned for this treat of a project. So Case, for some reason, decided that in order to take this cowling off here, you have to pull the cab off. And we said, no, we're not doing that. So we wiggled our way in there, pulled the block out, wiggled our way back in there, putting the block back in. Where we're at now, it's got new old stock pistons and sleeves. We reused the rods because they were fine. It's got new bearings in it because the bearings were down through to the copper. The sleeves, the first two had like 100 thousandths wear on the bore, which I don't even know how it ran on 5 cylinders with the first two being worn that bad. Where we're at now is we got to pull the turbo and the elbow off to put a different turbo on, because that one's a brand new turbo and we'd have to put a bunch of lines in it and adapters to get the right kind of fittings for our oil pressure and oil drain lines, and the center would need turned. We have a turbo that's already off one of these motors. The 1370 has given us an organ donation of a turbo to put on here. It's got a fuel leak already. As you can see, the injector pump's rather dark and there was quite the puddle underneath of it. It also needs all the power steering lines put back on. Those are going to be painful because those are mostly up underneath of that cowling, and it needs some sheet metal and other things. But we're going to get started with the turbo and the exhaust. Should be much easier to pull on the tailgate here. This is the one off the 1370. The engine, we believe, had a connecting rod bearing failure, as best we can tell. Go check that video out. I will link it in the description. This turbo was making plenty of boost on the other tractor. It wasn't acting like it was, having bad oil going through it or anything like that. Everything was acting good. I mean, it does what it's supposed to do. I'm going to pull these bolts off, set this manifold aside because it's still good. Just we have a brand new one on that. And then I'm going to put the oil drain line on the turbo because you just about can't get to those bolts. You saw me struggling with this nut here. It's bad. This is really bad to get on under there. I don't know that you can do it. So I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to slap the turbo on the manifold and struggle with that nut again for several minutes. So after a little bit of thinking and figuring here and thinking that I better check that this fits, I have determined that it does not fit. So that's got to go up to the bottom of the turbo, which is right there. That end we can make go where it needs to go. But buddy ain't getting there. So it's time for some customization, I do have a feeling. So after some inspection of a real 1175 and some figuring, we're going to make a plate that resembles the end of that is going to be a little bit wider and is going to have a hole drilled and tapped for a 1/2 inch pipe, so that we can thread a hydraulic line into that, because the real 1175, not this goober cobbled pile that we're working on here, the oil line comes down, goes behind the exhaust manifold back here, along the back, and drops down to the fitting here. I don't know what this is or why it's here, but it's there. It may have something to do with transmission cooler, but I don't know. I don't understand why it's there. I don't remember that on any of the other ones. Who is really to say? We'll figure it out later. So, and we're also going to pull the intake manifold that's on the 1370 platform from it blowing up and us not putting it back on yet. It's just there. We're going to put that on here so we don't have to press that core plug into that hole. We already have one that's pre-plugged, and it has an elbow on it as well. So that's going to be that. And I'm going to make that pipe, and we'll keep moving onward.